Greetings and welcome to Ghost Stories of Washington, Chapter 4, Stage Fright, Part 3, Well-Loved Shorty, and Curious George. So we find in our first story, Well-Loved Shorty. If ghosts appreciate warm acceptance as much as their flesh and blood counterparts do, then Shorty, the ghost at Capitol Hill Theater in Yakima, must be a very contented phantom. Bonnie Hughes, the theater's community relations director, indicated that she was anxious for Shorty's story to be included in his book so that he would get the recognition he deserves. Then, to prove her point, both Bonnie and stage manager Roger Smith, no relation to me, went out of their way to supply me with details of the haunting in their beautiful old theater. In some ways, the building is an amazing study in contrasts. Smith describes it as state-of-the-art, and all lighting equipment implanted in a building exhibiting an early 20th century motif and decor. Computers function in a facility occupied by red velvet seats that are 50 years old. The one feature that has not changed, however, is the Capitol's status as a haunted house. The name of the ghost is Shorty, simply Shorty. No first, last name. Smith said, No one can offer a description of Shorty. Nobody can relate a biography. His activities are manifested mostly when the theater is empty and at rest. Between shows, Shorty exists just as surely as the walls of the theater stand to house his unpredictable presence. Smith went on to detail one particularly dramatic encounter with their resident presence. It was 1890 and the Cold War was still raging. A touring dance troupe from then Czechoslovakia came to the Capitol Theater for an evening performance. Security was tight because dancers were tempted to defect and seek a better life in North America. He went on, a performance is heavily dependent on lighting for its aesthetic and dramatic effect. Lighting changes are affected by a cue sheet. This sheet is often several pages in length, detailing several hundred light changes during a presentation. One of the dances of the Czech group included a choreographed dagger fight between two rival peasants. Before the scene, much to the frustration and panic of the two dancers, one of the steel daggers was missing from the prop table on the stage right. In a baffling coincidence, page 13 of the lighting cue sheet was also missing, ripped from its place in the cue sheet notebook. Smith explained the lighting engineer and dancers carried on in an impoverished fashion. It was only the experience and cleverness of the dancers and the lighting engineer that allowed the scene to succeed with very little sacrifice of artistic quality. He continued, during the dance number on the stage, the dressing room area was locked, owing to the possibility that dancers would defect. Also, personal valuables and expensive costumes were kept in the dressing room complex. After the final scene, the 30 dancers trooped into the dressing room area to shed their outfits. As they approached dressing room number 8, the dancers were stunned by what they saw. The missing dagger was embedded in the door to the dressing room, and page 13 of the lighting cue sheet was impaled on the point of the knife. Smith acknowledged that for months afterward conjecture abounded as to the significance of the event. There was never any question that it was the work of Shorty. Whether or not the presence of a foreign dance troupe or the lamentable existence of the Cold War prompted the action of Shorty is not known. A few years after that dramatic occurrence, Shorty was once again at work with the theater's lights. Roger Smith recalled the incident. In 1985, a solo opera singer was scheduled to appear at the Capitol Theater. Smith said her performance was a medley of popular opera arias. The only other person on the stage with the star was the musician accompanying her on the piano. The stage lights above bathed the singer in a soft blue wash. In addition to overhead stage lights, theaters traditionally used powerful spotlights to accent the performer. Spotlights from a brightly defined circle that follows the performer across the stage. He continued, the opera singer gave a sterling performance and was awarded a standing ovation. When the curtain came down, the singer was quick to thank the stagehands for their diligence and competency. She especially singled out the work of the spotlight operators, praising their smoothness and on-target work as best she had ever experienced. The stage manager was speechless. In a perplexed voice, he told the opera singer that the two spotlight operators had both called in sick with food poisoning, and there had been nobody in the spot booth operating the lights during the show. Shorty is also generally credited with turning the stage lights on when employees were close enough to the lighting console to see that no one had touched it. But when Shorty made spotlights dance about the stage in a ballet-like sequence, Roger Smith decided it was time for action. As quickly and quietly as he could, the stage manager made his way up the stairs to the catwalk, where the lights were hung. When he found footprints but nothing else, he knew that the light dance had been not the work of practical joker at all. It was simply another demonstration of Shorty's illusions. Those incidents certainly support the theory that in life Shorty had been involved with technical aspects of the theater. The entity can also be a bit mischievous. He is credited with one of the grand stage curtains and with undoing some other employee's work. Roger Smith related one example. At the conclusion of a show, ushers routinely put all of the 1,500 seats in the upright position. It has been reported that at least twice the janitor has entered the theater a few hours later and found all 1,500 seats in the down position. And the specter has firmly demonstrated that he has no fondness for the sound of rock and roll. When the Capitol Theater hosts such shows, they experience unusual number of technical malfunctions, and the staff must work extra hard to ensure a successful show. For the most part, those Shorty's actions are either harmless or helpful. He's actually been credited with saving a life. When a piece of equipment above the stage broke away and began to fall, it was on a direct path to a woman standing on the stage. The object was heavy, and it had landed where it was headed. The woman would almost certainly have been killed. As another employee at the theater watched, the projectile impossibly changed course in mid-fall, like averting a tragedy. Over the years, changes to the structure of the theater have resulted in, among other things, and odd features, the existence of a completely inaccessible door. It is located 12 feet from the backstage area and is never used. No one even knows whether it leads to a room or simply a blank wall. The staff calls it Shorty's idea and door, because even though no one living ever goes near, the door is occasionally seen to be standing open. Physics investigating the theater found a phantom heat source near the door, 12 feet above the door. Shorty is known to have something of an unhealthy appetite. When staff leave a plate of cookies out overnight, the plate is always empty in the morning. Management at the Capitol Theater has no interest in trying to operate without their invisible helper. When a pair of ghost hunters asked to tour the haunted old theater, management agreed only if they promised not to exercise Shorty. Despite the staff's fondness for Shorty, very few people are comfortable with being alone in the enormous old building. Lone staff members have reported that late-night shifts in the massive theater have witnessed unexplained noises, footsteps in deserted hallways, clanging in the ventilation shafts, the elevator running, and no one on hand. Roger informed me. No staff member opts to be in the Capitol Theater alone after midnight. Although the fears may not be justified, Roger believes the adherence to the old adage, better safe than sorry, keeps everyone happy. By now, Shorty and the Capitol Theater are inseparable. As Roger Smith concluded, the Capitol Theater is a unique building. It is special in that it is on the National Register of Historic Buildings. It is also extraordinary in that it possesses an invisible caretaker, an invisible entity, a ghost. A ghost simply named Shorty. All right, and for our last short story for this episode, Curious George. Curious George. When he was asked about the Civic Theater in Spokane being haunted, Jack Phillips, the artistic director, replied, "I don't know that we're haunted, but we certainly do have a friend around. We have George with us here." Phillips explained, "George does seem to like to play tricks with the electronic light board. I have been walking through the theater late at night several times when 2 spotlights came on, just saying hello. I have to tell you that there's no malevolent sense whatsoever. Usually what happens is that 1 or 2 spotlights will simply come on, even when the lighting board is off. They'll come on and stay on for a while, and then they'll just go off again." But he also says that George has pulled the staff through a show under impossible circumstances. "We have had the one show where there was an electrical power failure, but our board worked. The theater ghost is slightly shy one. I don't think anyone's ever seen him. Not to my knowledge, at least, Philip said. George's lack of visibility has not affected the staff's devotion to their paranormal presence. In keeping with one of the many theater traditions, just before moving from one building to another, the people associated with the civic carefully swept the dust from the stage of their former home and deposited it at a new venue. They did not want to take a chance on leaving George behind. The first time the toilet in the men's room flushed when no one was anywhere near the washroom, they were satisfied that they'd been successful in transporting their very special entity. Hopefully you enjoyed this chapter of Ghost Stories of Washington, Chapter 4, Stage Fright, Part 3, Well-Loved Shorty and Curious George. Until next time, we'll see you in Chapter 5 of Ghost Stories of Washington, The Road Well Traveled. Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.